All right. So have you ever had that moment? Like you're all set to speak English and suddenly your brain feels like it's trying to do a million things at once.
Yeah.
Like you're thinking about the grammar, searching for that perfect word,
Right.
worrying about how you sound.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just exhausting, right?
It is. It is.
You end up hesitating, maybe translating in your head and just generally feeling stuck.
Yeah.
I bet a lot of our listeners can relate to that, right?
Absolutely. It's incredibly common. It's like this internal battle that just saps your fluency.
It really does. So today we're diving into this idea. What if the key to speaking English more naturally is to actually think less about it and just speak more?
Interesting.
So in this deep dive, we're going to give you some really practical strategies to retrain your brain,
Okay.
to help you move past that constant hesitation and start expressing yourself more spontaneously in English.
That's a really great goal. I think a lot of people would love to get to that point.
Wouldn't it be fantastic?
Yeah.
Like no more overthinking, just natural flowing English.
Exactly. So what we're going to do is give you some actionable steps that you can start using right away
Love it.
to build that automatic speaking ability.
I think a lot of people have had this experience too, where it's like your thoughts in English are crystal clear in your head.
Oh, yeah.
But the moment you try to say them out loud, it's like they hit a wall.
It's like hitting a brick wall.
It's like, come on, tongue, keep up with my brain here.
Yeah, there's this frustrating disconnect. Like you understand, but you can't quite produce it at the speed you want.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to unpack today, this gap between understanding and fluency.
Okay.
We're going to dig into how overthinking actually blocks your fluency, how speaking more can make a huge difference, and how to deal with those pesky fears that hold so many of us back. Plus, we'll share some concrete strategies and daily exercises that you can start using today.
Awesome. Really practical stuff to help people overcome this, I think.
Exactly. Practical and easy to implement. So let's get right to it. Let's talk about this whole overthinking thing. What does that actually look like when someone's trying to speak English in real time?
Well, you often see these like pauses, right?
Yeah.
The speaker's trying to remember grammar rules, find the perfect words, and make sure their pronunciation is spot on, all at the same time.
Right.
It's like trying to juggle like 5 flaming torches while riding a unicycle.
That's a vivid image.
It just doesn't work very well. You end up dropping something or everything. And in this case, it's your fluency that takes a hit.
It's true. It's like instead of focusing on communicating, you're stuck in this mental loop of analysis.
Exactly.
And it's funny because, imagine if you applied that same level of analysis to everything you do.
Yeah.
Like driving, for instance. Imagine if you were constantly thinking about the combustion rate in the engine.
Right. Or the aerodynamics of your car.
Or the precise angle of the steering wheel for every tiny adjustment. You probably never leave your driveway.
Exactly. You'd be so paralyzed by overthinking that you wouldn't be able to function.
Right. And I think that's what happens with speaking English for a lot of people. They get so caught up in trying to get everything perfect that they end up getting nowhere.
Yeah, the fear of making mistakes really fuels that overthinking.
It's a vicious cycle, isn't it?
It is. They want to avoid errors, so they hesitate. And then that hesitation makes the speaking even harder.
Exactly. So here's the thing. Think about how easily you speak in your native language. You don't analyze every sentence before you say it, right?
It just flows naturally.
So why should English be any different? Why do we put so much pressure on ourselves to get it perfect right from the start?
It's interesting, isn't it? Like we don't expect ourselves to be perfect at anything else when we're learning.
Exactly. And the irony is that striving for that perfection actually holds us back.
It does. And that constant pressure to get everything right can really damage your confidence.
Oh, absolutely.
You set this unrealistic standard for yourself, and then when you don't meet it, you start doubting your abilities.
And it makes you want to avoid speaking altogether.
Right, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're so afraid of making a mistake that you end up not speaking at all, which means you don't get the practice you need to improve.
It's that classic fear of failure, and it can really paralyze you. Have you noticed that the people who become fluent in English are often the ones who are willing to speak more freely, even if they make mistakes?
Oh, absolutely. They're not afraid to put themselves out there to experiment with the language.
Right. They prioritize communication over perfection. They understand that mistakes are part of the process.
Yeah, and they learn from them.
Exactly. So let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a situation where you wanted to say something in English, but you just froze up?
Oh, all the time, especially when I was first learning.
Yeah, it's like your mind goes blank and you can't get the words out.
And it's not even that you don't know what to say. It's just that fear kicks in and shuts you down.
That fear can be so powerful, but here's the good news. We can overcome it. By recognizing this pattern, this overthinking that leads to fear, and then silence, we can start to break free.
Exactly. It's about shifting our focus from perfect thinking to simply speaking.
Right. We've talked about how overthinking can be a major obstacle to fluency.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's explore the flip side, the incredible power of actually speaking more.
I like that, turning it on its head.
Right. So let's look at the benefits of putting those thoughts into action.
Okay.
What's the biggest advantage you see in speaking more?
For me, the biggest benefit is that you start to build confidence. When you speak, even if it's a little messy at first, you're training your brain to handle real-time conversations in English.
Right. You're building up that muscle memory, so to speak.
Exactly. And each time you successfully communicate an idea, each small win, it chips away at that self-doubt.
I love that analogy of a muscle. It really is like working out. The more you do it, the stronger you get.
Absolutely. And just like with physical exercise, the key is consistency.
And the more you practice speaking, the more fluent you become.
Right. Forming sentences gets easier. You don't have to search for words as much. It becomes more automatic.
It's like building those neural pathways in your brain. And it all goes back to what we were saying earlier about native speakers.
Right. They don't think about the grammar rules while they're speaking. It's just instinctual for them.
Exactly. That's what we want to achieve, to make speaking English feel as natural and effortless as speaking our native language. And the way to do that is to speak, speak, speak.
Exactly. And here's something interesting. By letting go of that need to be perfect, you can actually start to sound more natural and conversational.
Oh, for sure. I've met learners who are so focused on grammar that their English sounds a bit robotic.
It's like they're reading from a textbook instead of having a conversation.
Exactly. But when you're just focused on expressing yourself, that's when the real magic happens.
Yeah, you start to develop your own unique voice, your own style.
And that's what makes your English engaging and interesting to listen to.
Another fascinating thing about speaking more is that it actually speeds up your overall learning.
How so?
Well, when you're using the language actively, your brain starts to pick up on patterns naturally.
Okay.
You begin to internalize grammar structures and vocabulary without having to consciously memorize rules.
Interesting. So it's like learning through immersion.
Exactly. Think about how children learn their first language. They don't study textbooks. They learn through constant exposure and interaction.
Right. They absorb the language organically.
Exactly. And we can tap into that same learning process by prioritizing speaking.
Makes sense. So to recap the benefits of speaking more, it builds confidence, improves fluency, makes your English sound more natural, and actually helps you learn faster.
That's right. And let's not forget, it makes the whole learning experience much more enjoyable.
It does. It takes away that pressure and anxiety. So I know what some of our listeners might be thinking right now. All of this sounds great, but what about my fear? What about the fear of making mistakes, the fear of being judged? We're going to address those concerns head on in the next part of our deep dive.
Absolutely. We'll talk about those common fears and how to overcome them.
Stay tuned.
We'll be right back.
Okay, so we've established that overthinking can be a real roadblock to fluency, and we've explored the power of speaking more. But let's be honest, fear is a huge factor for many English learners.
It's a major hurdle for a lot of people.
Let's talk about some of those common fears that prevent people from speaking up. What's the biggest one you encounter?
I'd say the most common fear is the fear of making mistakes.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
People are so worried about getting the grammar wrong or using the wrong word that they hesitate to speak at all.
Right, like they need to be perfect from the get-go.
Exactly. But the truth is, making mistakes is not only normal, it's actually essential for learning.
It really is. I always say mistakes are proof that you're learning.
I love that. It's so true. Think about how babies learn to speak. They make tons of mistakes, they mispronounce words, they use incorrect grammar, but they keep going.
Right, and nobody criticizes them for it. They just keep practicing and experimenting until they get it right.
Exactly. And that's the attitude we need to adopt as English learners. Mistakes are not something to be afraid of. They're opportunities to learn and grow.
So next time you find yourself hesitating because you're afraid of making a mistake, try to shift your perspective. Instead of thinking, I must not make any errors, tell yourself every mistake I make is a chance to improve.
Another big fear is the fear of being judged or laughed at by native speakers.
Oh, yeah, I can see how that would be intimidating.
People worry that their accent will be too strong or that their grammar will be too bad and that others will make fun of them.
Right, like they'll be ridiculed for their efforts.
But the reality is that most native speakers are actually very understanding and appreciative of people who are trying to learn their language.
In my experience, that's been true. Most people are just happy to communicate and they admire the effort you're making.
Exactly. And even if someone does react negatively, which is rare, it's important to remember that their judgment doesn't define you.
Right, it says more about them than it does about you.
Now, another common fear is the fear of not having the right words, of having a limited vocabulary.
Oh, yeah, that feeling of not being able to express yourself adequately.
Exactly. People think they need to have a massive vocabulary to be able to speak English well, but that's just not true.
Right, you can communicate a lot with even a basic vocabulary.
Exactly. You can use simple words, gestures, synonyms. Think about how children communicate.
Right, they manage to get their point across even with a limited number of words.
And here's a little secret. Even native speakers forget words sometimes.
All the time.
But they don't just stop talking. They find ways to explain what they mean using different words or phrases.
Exactly. So if you can't think of the perfect word, don't panic. Just try to explain it in a different way.
And finally, a lot of learners fear getting stuck in a conversation, not knowing what to say next.
Oh, yeah, that dreaded awkward silence.
It can be really uncomfortable.
It can, but there are ways to deal with it. You can use filler phrases to buy yourself some time, like, let me think about that for a second, or that's a really interesting question.
Those are great. And you can also ask questions to keep the conversation going.
Right, or even just admit that you're drawing a blank and ask for help.
Exactly. The key is to not let that fear paralyze you.
Right. So to summarize our strategies for overcoming fear, reframe mistakes as learning opportunities, don't worry too much about what others think, use simple language, and have some filler phrases ready.
Those are great tips.
And remember, the more you speak, the less scary it becomes.
Absolutely. Practice makes perfect, or at least it makes us less afraid.
Exactly. Now that we've tackled some of those mental roadblocks, let's move on to the practical stuff. Let's talk about specific techniques you can use to train your brain to think less and speak more.
Let's get into the nitty-gritty.
All right, so we've talked about why it's so beneficial to speak more and think less. Now let's dive into the how. What are some practical things our listeners can do to actually make this shift?
One of the most effective things you can do is to consciously make an effort to speak without over-preparing.
Okay, so don't overthink it, just speak.
Exactly. A lot of learners get stuck in this loop of trying to construct perfect sentences in their heads before they even open their mouths.
Right, like they're writing an essay in their minds.
Yeah, but that just slows you down and makes the whole process much more difficult.
So it's better to just dive in and start talking, even if it's not perfect.
Exactly. Think about learning to ride a bike. You can read all the instructions and visualize yourself riding perfectly, but you won't actually learn until you get on the bike and start pedaling.
Right, you have to take action and just go for it.
And the same is true for speaking English. You have to get out there and start speaking, even if you make mistakes.
Makes sense. So what's another practical tip?
Another great technique is to practice speaking out loud every day, even when you're alone.
Oh, I love this one. I talk to myself all the time in English.
It might feel a little strange at first, but it's a really effective way to train your brain to think in English and to get comfortable with the sounds of the language.
It's like giving yourself a private English lesson.
Exactly. You can describe what you're doing, talk about your day, or even just have a conversation with yourself in the mirror.
The mirror is a great tool.
And it can be really fun to just let your thoughts flow freely in English without worrying about making mistakes.
Exactly. Now, for listeners who are ready to take their speaking skills to the next level, I highly recommend a technique called shadowing.
Oh, shadowing is fantastic.
Have you ever tried it?
Yeah, it was a game changer for me.
So for those who aren't familiar with it, shadowing is basically listening to a native English speaker and repeating what they're saying at the same time.
You're like their shadow, mimicking their pronunciation, their rhythm, their intonation.
Exactly. And it's amazing for training your brain to process English faster and respond more quickly.
It also helps you develop a more natural accent.
Right. It's like you're absorbing the nuances of the language through osmosis.
Now, speaking of real-life conversations, another crucial strategy is to actively seek out opportunities to speak English with other people.
This is where the rubber meets the road, right?
Exactly. You can join English conversation groups, talk to tourists, or even use language exchange apps to connect with other learners.
The key is to put yourself in situations where you have to speak English.
That's right. The more you speak, the more comfortable you'll become.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes. Remember, everyone makes mistakes. It's part of the process.
Now, one last thing I want to touch on is the habit of mental translation.
Oh, yeah, that's a sneaky one.
A lot of learners do this unconsciously. They think in their native language and then translate it into English before they speak.
Right, it's like having a mental translator in your head.
Exactly. But that extra step takes time and can really slow you down.
So how do we break this habit?
The key is to train your brain to think directly in English.
Okay, but how do we actually do that?
One way is to immerse yourself in the language as much as possible. Change the language settings on your phone and computer to English. Watch English language movies and TV shows. Listen to English music and podcasts.
Right, surround yourself with the language.
Exactly. And the more you do that, the more natural it will become to think in English.
Makes sense. So to recap, speak without over-preparing, practice speaking out loud daily, Try shadowing, find opportunities to speak with others, and work on breaking the habit of mental translation.
Those are great strategies.
Now let's get even more practical.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Let's talk about some super simple, bite-sized daily practices that our listeners can start doing today to boost their speaking confidence and reduce hesitation.
Love it. Let's make this actionable.
All right, what are some easy things people can do to incorporate more speaking into their daily lives?
One fun practice is what I call the 1-minute speaking challenge.
Okay, tell me more about that.
It's really simple. Every day, choose a topic, any topic at all, and speak about it in English for 1 minute without stopping.
I love that. It's so manageable and anyone can do it.
Exactly. You can talk about your favorite food, a recent news story, your plans for the weekend, anything that comes to mind.
And as you get more comfortable, you can increase the time to 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and so on.
The point is to push yourself to keep speaking, even if you make mistakes.
It's all about building that fluency muscle.
Another easy practice is to incorporate more self-talk into your day.
Oh yeah, I'm all about self-talk.
As you're going about your daily activities, just describe what you're doing in English.
Like I'm making coffee or I'm walking the dog.
Exactly. It's a simple way to keep your brain engaged in English throughout the day.
And it can be really fun too. You start noticing all these little things you can describe in English.
For those who are a bit more tech savvy, I also recommend recording yourself speaking English.
Oh yeah, that can be really insightful.
It might feel a little awkward at first, but listening back to your own voice can help you identify areas where you can improve.
Like you might notice that you hesitate a lot or that you have trouble with certain sounds.
Exactly. And once you're aware of those areas, you can focus on improving them.
Now here's a really simple but effective technique that anyone can do. Practice speaking in front of a mirror.
Oh, I love that one.
It might sound silly, but it can really help boost your confidence.
Yeah, you get used to seeing yourself speaking English, and it becomes less intimidating.
And it can also help you pay attention to your body language and sexual expressions, which are important for effective communication.
Now, for a more fun and engaging way to practice, try singing along to your favorite English songs.
Oh yeah, that's a great one.
It helps with pronunciation, rhythm, and it just makes the whole learning process more enjoyable.
And you can do it anywhere, in the car, in the shower, while you're cooking.
And finally, make it a goal to have at least one brief conversation in English with another person every day.
That's a great challenge.
It could be a language exchange partner, a friend who also speaks English, or even just a quick chat with a stranger.
The point is to get out there and use the language in a real-world setting.
Exactly. And remember, every little bit of practice helps.
And the best part about these daily practices is that they don't require a huge time commitment.
Right. You can easily fit them into your existing routine.
And over time, those small efforts can add up to big results.
They can transform your speaking skills and your confidence.
Coming up next, we'll wrap up our deep dive with some final thoughts and a specific challenge to help you keep the momentum going. Stay tuned.
Don't go anywhere.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today, from understanding the challenges of overthinking to developing practical daily speaking habits.
It's been a really comprehensive discussion.
But before we sign off, I want to leave you with a few key takeaways.
Yes, let's distill the essence of what we've talked about.
First and foremost, remember that the goal of language learning is effective communication, not perfection.
Couldn't agree more.
You don't need to have flawless grammar or a massive vocabulary to be able to express yourself clearly and confidently.
What matters most is the willingness to try to put yourself out there and speak, even if you make mistakes.
So many learners get caught in this trap of waiting until they feel ready to speak.
Right, like there's some magical moment when they'll suddenly be fluent.
But the truth is, the only way to become ready is to actually start speaking.
Exactly. You have to embrace the journey, mistakes, and all.
And speaking of mistakes, remember that they're not failures, they're opportunities to learn and grow.
Every mistake you make is a step closer to fluency.
So don't be afraid to make them, embrace them, learn from them, and keep moving forward.
Now, here's a challenge for all of our listeners. Commit to speaking in English every day, even if it's just for a minute or two.
I love this challenge. It's so simple yet so powerful.
It's about building that consistency, that habit of speaking.
And over time, those small daily efforts can have a transformative effect on your fluency.
Absolutely. And don't forget to surround yourself with English as much as possible. Watch movies, listen to music, read books, immerse yourself in the language.
The more you expose yourself to English, the more natural it will become.
And now for a final actionable step. As soon as you finish listening to this deep dive, take 1 minute to speak out loud in English about something you learned today.
Great idea. Don't overthink it. Just let the words flow.
This is your chance to put what you've learned into practice immediately.
And remember, you have everything you need to achieve fluency in English. Believe in yourself, be consistent, and enjoy the journey.
And never stop learning. Language learning is a lifelong adventure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Keep practicing.